Hello, Stefan. Stefan, I think Selmar. It's your good old buddy, Dark Warrior. I know that we've been having our little debates on YouTube, we call it run-ins, I guess. Well, I guess they were civilized discussions, but uh, I'm going to respond to your double standard against the whites, the media bias. I basically I didn't really look at this video, I don't think, but I'm sure this is another video where black on white crime you believe is not reported compared to white on black crime, which I do agree. It is not. It probably is not reported because of political correctness in terms of how blacks are going to be perceived, and they think that it's going to motivate racism against blacks, innocent blacks, more racial profiling and all the other ilk. Yes, I do agree. I might be wrong, but there is a very strong possibility that there is the double standard and the media is covering it up. I don't go to the extent that you go to, that some evil Jews that hate whites are doing it. I mean, it sounds similar to conspiracy anti-racists to believe that there are evil white elites that are trying to purposely not educate blacks. They really know that blacks are equal, but to save money, they're trying to oppress and keep down blacks. Which in some sense I do understand, but it is kind of an exaggeration. So I think that you and black nationalists are very similar in those regards. In saying that, I'm not going to talk about double standard. I'm not going to talk about this video in terms of crime. I've already conceded that there's a very strong possibility that white on black crime is not reported because of the fear that it will reinforce a stereotype of blacks and may influence more discrimination towards blacks in employment in other areas, which blacks who are not criminals or have bad things will suffer from it. More racial profiling from whites who are not in the police department but are seeing this image of blacks in the media. So I'll concede that point. The thing I want to discuss is, can there be white groups without the notion of them being racist? Well, I do believe so. And this may sound superficial, but if whites wanted to create a group, white basketball players wanted to create a support group, I don't see any problem with that. We can't. I mean, let's just be honest. White basketball players are not perceived in the highest image in terms of performance and capacity compared to black basketball players. I mean, when Larry Bird said that they need more white role models, I mean, there was a question that he was being racist. He wasn't being racist. He was stating a fact. It's an absolute fact. I mean, it's not carried out. It's mostly carried out by the white media. I mean, many blacks definitely believe in the stereotype, but many whites who are the majority believe in the stereotype. You really can't blame blacks per se in terms of blame blacks more than whites in terms of population percentages who believe in the stereotype of the white boy that can't play defense and can only shoot. I mean, you can't. I mean, unfortunately, the race reality is that whites are 80% of the country, so whites have 80% impact of reinforcing that stereotype or internalizing that stereotype. And I also think that one of the reasons why it's not brought up the racial support groups in basketball is that basketball is not seen as something that measures internal superiority or mental superiority, which is true. I mean, if you look at it from a common sense standpoint, the images of a CEO, images of I guess, a retail manager or being a business leader or being a scientist, that's seen as being more. It's seen as more being more valued in a Western culture in terms of complete value. I mean, entertainment value. Yes, basketball will supersede, the geeky scientist geeky stereotypical scientist. Even a CEO, and in many regards, even politicians. But in terms of objective, concrete value, the President of the United States or Michael Jordan, come on. So that's why, this notion of racial support groups in this black-dominated area, and it is a black-dominated area. Yes, I know that majority of the owners are white, but in terms of playing, that is a black-dominated area. There's no dispute about it. And you could say, well, at least you own it, so we need to look at the ownership. Well, those white guys were from families that bought those teams. Yes, we can discuss that area, that support system for blacks in another area, in another video, I'm sorry. But in this video, we're going to be fair. I'm going to say that, yes, it is justified to have a white support group in basketball. And yes, we could talk about the racism of, possible racism. Yes, black basketball players have reported or believe that whites get less fouls than blacks. Yes, in that area, okay, we can say that there's anti-quote-unquote black racism. But overall, in terms of performance, in terms of how white basketball players perceived, there's no question. I'm telling you, the black person, there's no question the white basketball player is looked, not looked down upon, but is not seen as equal as a black basketball player. It's that simple. I mean, even in the 1980s, if you look at how blacks reacted to Larry Bird, not just blacks, but the whites who didn't like Larry Bird, because it wasn't just black people, but in this area, I think in the 80s, in particular, how blacks reacted to Larry Bird, you can clearly see that many blacks started to get that perception that we're better than them. We're inherently better than them, and this white guy coming out of nowhere beating black guys, well, he can't be that good. We have to be careful, because there's going to be a black scientist, there's going to be black scientists, there's going to be black intellectuals, there's going to be black chess players. I know that white supremacists think that's just crazy, but there will be black intellectuals that will very quickly go into white dominated areas. And what happens when whites say, well, he's really not that good, and they're just saying that he's good because he's black. He's the great black hope. A lot of black people, even white people, in the 80s, they would say that Larry Bird was a great white hope. Well, I'm going to tell you, is Obama Baraka the great black hope now? Is he really that good? You're going to get these same type of questions, so you need to be careful when you're using these words. Okay. Yes, we understand. Using white hope, making these comments does not mean that we should not be, aware of anti-black racism. Of course not. But I need to put these things in check. So yes, I mean, Stephon in that area, the black basketball. I'm sure there's other rap music, definitely rap music. I mean, the perception of white rappers, except for Eminem in general, that they don't have the capabilities of rapping, and they're not taken very seriously. And there's even some racism in blues music, surprisingly. Even though there's in terms of white blues players, whites themselves want to see black blues players because they believe that they are more authentic. But so there's racism toward whites in America. I'm not going to sit there and say that I believe on Stephon's level that they are equal, even not more adverse than anti-black racism, institutional racism. No, I won't say that. But it does exist, and that is one of the kernels of truth that the white